2, 1. Good evening. Tonight is October 12th, and we do have a quorum, so I will call this meeting to order. Due to the current federal and state emergency declarations and guidance about limiting person-to-person contact due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting of the Edina Public School District School Board is being conducted online in accordance with statutes 13B021, meetings by telephone and other electronic means. Persons may monitor this meeting from a remote location by the district's YouTube channel. School board members and other meeting participants are required or reminded to mute their microphone or phone when they are not speaking. Anyone wishing to speak should unmute their microphone so I can see who is waiting to speak and then wait to be recognized by me. I will determine the order in which board members wishing to speak will be recognized. If people from the community are planning to come to our if people from the community decide that they want to come to our regular board meeting, please remember that we only have seating available for 10. Let's see. Sorry, I lost my place.
Board discussion? All right.
Sorry about that. Sorry. I have so many notes on different scenarios that we have going on here.
They wanted to the agenda. They wanted to come in to speak.
I did. Yes. So if individuals want to address, we're taking public comment here in the district office conference room. You'll be invited to sit at the table in front of the board and be given 3 minutes to speak. And then we have a cleaning protocol after each speaker, where we'll clean the table and the computer. And then I just wanted to remind people that if you do not wish to address the board in person, we're still taking comments via email at schoolboard@edinaschools.org and use the subject line board meeting comments. If you have any questions about the board meetings in online or in person, please contact the superintendent's office. The first order of business is agenda approval. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda for tonight?
So moved.
Second.
We will now vote to approve the agenda.
Ellenberg,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Green,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Michelson,
Aye.
Shaw,
Aye.
Wallen-Friedman.
Aye.
The agenda is approved. I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Schultz to review the agenda for us, and then we'll move to our first item.
So tonight, the Valley View Middle School web program present for excellence in action. We will hear from the members of the public. We have several items on the consent agenda, including guidebooks and some program transfers, as well as the student support services agreements. We're going to have a discussion about learning models and our plans for collecting data around those models. Those are the models that we're implementing currently, hybrid and virtual. So I'll talk about the decision making behind those models. Val's here for early learning program report. There's policies for the rest of it, and then in action, you're ratifying the general obligation, all facilities refunding bonds, and taking action on the policies 407 and 408.
Thank you, Superintendent Schultz. We now have our excellence in action portion of the agenda, and tonight we're going to highlight Valley View Middle School's web program. And so tonight, who do we have here tonight? I see some faces that we don't usually have at board meetings. So,
Catherine, do you want to introduce yourself and your team?
I sure do. Hello, my name is Katie Higgins. Thank you so much for inviting us to share a little bit about web. Tonight, we have Gretchen Brandt is joining me. Gretchen, you want to wave? Hello, you can see us. And we have two students that are helping us out tonight, Indra and Ruhi. And we're so thankful that they could spare some time tonight to come and share a little bit about the web program. I'm going to kick it off. And I am going to request that your cameras are on for just a minute. One of the things that we do that is a huge program tenet in Web is we try to play and have fun together, and we try to build community. And we've had to get really creative with how we build community online. And we thought, hey, why don't we let these grown-ups try this for a minute? So if you don't mind, we'd love it if your camera is on, and I want you to join me in this activity called Matchy Matchy. We're going to play quick, so you have to kind of listen fast. There are 3 motions that you need to know. How many are there? Show me with your fingers. There's 3. Oh, good. There's 3 motions that you need to know. The first motion is a side clap. Let me see a side clap. Good. Side clap like this. Good. Not in front of your face, because I want to, over here, side clap. Good. So there's 3 motions. Side clap. Your second motion is 2 thumbs up. Show me 2 thumbs up. Good. Now we're going to do those together fast. Side clap, 2 thumbs up. Last one, fist bump. Fist bump. Last one. So we've got 3 motions. Side clap, 2 thumbs up, fist bump. Ooh, well done. Well done. So here comes the matchy matchy part. We are one team. We are Web leaders. And sometimes we have to be really aligned in our thinking. And we're going to play a quick game called Matchy Matchy. I'm going to count to 3. I'm going to say 1, 2, 3. And you need to quickly do one of those 3 motions. And we're going to all end up matching. We're going to work really hard to all match. So here we go. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Ooh, okay. Look around, look around. We're going to get better at the next time, and we're going to all match. Here we go. Here we go. You've maybe been sitting, so maybe you need to roll your shoulders a little bit, shake out those arms. Here we go. On the count of 3, match. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Oh, we're so close. We're really, really close. 3rd time's a charm, and that's all you get because you're on a tight schedule. Hopefully you saw it. Hopefully you know what to do. On the count of 3, pick one of those motions. 1, 2, 3. Oh, look at that. Yay. Give yourself some virtual high fives. Virtual high fives all around. Good job. I'm going to share my screen for just a minute so that you can hear more about all the fun that we do with Web.
Okay, well, welcome everybody, and thank you so much for having us. I'm going to talk a little bit about what WEB is. WEB stands for Where Everybody Belongs, and it's a middle school orientation and transition program to support our 6th graders. It's also a leadership training program for our 8th graders. And WEB's main goal is to successfully help our 6th graders transition and have a positive school year by addressing 3 fundamental things, and that would be safety, information, and connection. So we wanted to give you some data behind the work that we've been doing too. We began our web program at Valley View in 2013. We wrote an Ed Fund grant and were able to send 3 of us as coordinators to go be trained. This web is a national program. And over the last 8 years, we're in our 8th year, we have trained 800 leaders, and about 2,800 students have been impacted by our work. This year, we have around 70 8th grade leaders impacting 350 of our 6th graders at Valley View.
Hi, my name is Indra Kariwala. I'm an 8th grade web leader at Valley View, and web is all about building relationships and making connections. In past years, web leaders engaged in monthly leadership activities together. For 6th graders, we led engaging flex sessions, taught relevant lessons in advisory class, and mentored students one-on-one. This year, because of the circumstances and the pandemic and everything will be looking a little bit different because we will have to make connections virtually. However, all 6th graders will continue to have multiple connections with their web leaders throughout the school year.
Hello, Hello, my name is Ruhi Krediker, and I'm an 8th grader at Valley View. As web leaders, our first contact to each 6th grader was a personalized welcome email from their web leader. We also plan to connect through Google Meets and some online games and activities. Some of our goals are to provide lots of support, offer advice, tips, and be encouraging. We hope to make a positive difference in their school year and help them feel connected to our school community in a meaningful way.
That is all we have. Thank you for letting us share about web.
Thank you very much.
Does anyone have any questions?
Can I ask a question for either Ruhi or Indra? Was there an impact on you when you were a 6th grader? Do you remember your web leaders and your web connections as 6th graders?
Yeah, so I remember when I was in 6th grade, the web leaders wrote little messages on everyone's locker and just on a piece of paper, and they stuck it to their locker. And I just thought that was really cool, and it made me feel like a little more in place.
That's fun.
Yeah, definitely. They just kind of made us feel more welcome. And if you had a question, you knew there were people that you could go to ask, and that would help guide you.
Great.
It's funny you mentioned that. I was actually going to ask if your group was the group that wrote the notes on the lockers, because when my daughter and I went to tour Valley View, the notes on the lockers brought the biggest smile to her face. Aww. And made me as a parent feel way less anxious. And so you know, you don't students, I think you also help parents feel good about their students transitioning to Valley View, because I felt so good feeling those notes and seeing her smile. So thank you.
Aww.
Anything else?
Exciting program. Thank you for sharing with us.
Yeah, thank you for coming and sharing with us.
Thank you, guys.
Bye. We're now going to move on to hearings from members of the public. And we have some email feedback. We have no in-person feedback tonight, so I'm going to ask John Tope to read the email feedback. Are you going to check to make sure? Okay. He has 3 emails to read tonight. We did receive multiple emails regarding bringing first grade back in person, and so I took a sample of some of those, but I just wanted to let the community know that there were more than just the couple that are being read tonight. So John, I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening, Chair Ellenberg. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The first writer writes, "First, thank you for all you are doing in these trying times. It is greatly appreciated, and I suspect must feel mostly underappreciated by a bunch of opinionated parents. At the risk of becoming one of those parents, I felt compelled to write this email. I do appreciate today's survey with its clear goal of trying to be flexible and adaptable in this ever-changing situation. However, it concerns me greatly that the only option presented is sending elementary kids back to school full-time without social distancing. I am currently hybrid, and as much as I want my second grader back full-time, I do not want it to be done in an unsafe manner. It seems to me there are multiple other options. As you are well aware, the Minnetonka district is sending their elementary kids to school daily, but with the trade-off, middle school/high school being more virtual. We have friends in Wisconsin who send their elementary school kids daily, but for half days so that social distancing can be maintained. Half go in the morning, half in the afternoon. There is an added benefit here of consistency and routine for both kids and parents. Either of these options, I believe, are preferable to the current situation and what is being proposed in the survey. I am worried that by trying to cater to everyone, you will create an unsafe environment for everyone. An option of foregoing social distancing seems the worst solution, particularly when others have found a way to make it work otherwise. What kind of message are we sending to the kids on how to conduct themselves if we say that social distancing isn't important? I understand that these are difficult decisions, but I implore you not to forego one of the crucial public health tenets being used to fight this pandemic. And please consider that social distancing not only helps with COVID, it also helps with flu, which will be important to battle this season as well if we are to continue to flatten the curve and not exceed our hospital capacity. While hybrid has been challenging, I have been very pleased with the creativity shown thus far on how to keep our kids learning and still safe. Please do not take a step backwards. Just like in medicine where we need to triage patients, I believe our education system needs to do the same and determine who is the priority in getting back to in-person school. I know you are getting pressure from many directions, but please don't let that pressure compromise the safety of our children and our community. Thank you for your consideration work in getting us to the point. Sincerely, Jody Dvorkin, MD, MPH, proud Concord parent. The next writer writes, good morning. I am a parent in the Edina School District and have a 5th grader and 1st grader. I am writing to share my thoughts and concerns of hybrid learning. My 1st grader has a fantastic teacher. Unfortunately, my 1st grader missed the last half of kindergarten and is in 1st grade not able to read and is still learning the basics of math. 1st graders are missing a very pivotal part of learning from teachers. They have all missed part of kindergarten and are receiving an abbreviated form of 1st grade. Teaching my 1st grader is a full-time job. It requires me to sit next to him the entire time he is learning, as he needs instructions/directions read to him. He has also not mastered Seesaw, which takes him and I to work through it together. He's a very active, social 1st grade boy, and working with his mom alone in a room is not conducive to his learning. I am a working parent, which is nearly impossible to get any work done when he is at home Wednesday through Friday. 1st graders should be in school if the numbers allow. They have missed and are missing a very integral part of learning. They are at a pivotal part of their learning stage, reading basic math. As my son's mom, who is not trained in education, I can tell that I do not have the tools to help him in this learning stage. My 5th grader would love to be at school and she would be best served at school. However, she is much more successful at completing her work at home than my 1st grader. She has the resources that she needs for help when she is virtual. I would strongly encourage the school board to look at getting 1st graders back to school full time. These kids need their teachers to help them learn the basics of school. They are at an important time of school to learn to read and to learn basic math. This will set them up to continue to be successful in school. The general public does not have the funds to pay for private tutoring. Please consider bringing 1st graders back to school full time. Thank you. The last writer writes Mr. Schultz, Ms. Allenberg, Mr. Michelson, Ms. Shaw, Ms. Jones, Mr. Wallen-Friedman, Mr. Fox, and Ms. Green. Thank you for your service to our children. We appreciate all the time and thoughtful consideration that went into developing the current hybrid model being used in Edina School. We write to ask that you consider allowing the 1st graders to follow the same 4 full-day plan as the kindergartners. The same factors that applied in your decision to allow kindergartners 4 full days apply to the 1st graders. From the district's website on the K Learning Plan, quote, to successfully transition the district's littlest learners to doing school like a big kid, we know that having K students in school with teachers as much as possible is important, close quote. We believe having the 1st graders in school with teachers 4 days per week is important. The best available evidence indicates that COVID-19 presents a relatively low risk to children. If children become infected, they are far less likely to suffer severe symptoms. At the same time, the harms attributed to not being in schools on the social, emotional, and behavioral health, economic well-being, and academic achievement of children in both the short term and long term are well known and significant. She references the Centers for Disease Control website. Her observations: 1, 1st grade is an important year of growth for our little learners, both socially and academically. 1st graders are typically not yet reading or are not yet reading with fluency or comprehension. Any deficiencies in learning during the 1st grade year could have long-term impacts on these learners. Second observation, these little learners are already behind. This year's first graders are closer to a kindergartner developmentally than they would typically be, as they missed 3 months of in-person learning last year due to COVID-19. It is estimated that the average student could fall 7 months behind academically if the students are not brought back. He's quoting data from consulting group McKinsey and Company. 4 full days would stop the students from falling further behind. Third observation, first graders cannot do distance learning on their own. The at-home checklist assists parents in teaching their children, but cannot be followed independently by first graders. This leads to increased stress and anxiety for both parents and the children, which will only worsen as time goes on. E-learning raises serious concerns about these little learners' comprehension of the material. Not only are the parents often trying to attend to other children or work outside the home, concepts are taught in a different way than the way in which many of us learn. Thank you for all you do for our kids. We know this is an incredibly difficult balance. We see firsthand the effects the hybrid learning model is having on our kids and wanted to share our experience. Thank you for your consideration, Katie and Jim Downey.
Thank you for reading those, John.
Yep.
And thank you for all the individuals that took the time to send us your input and engaging with our district with their concerns. We all do appreciate it. We're now going to move on to our consent agenda. Is there anything that anyone would like to remove from the consent agenda?
Yes, I'd like to have the.
Oh, go ahead.
I'd like to have the Panorama contract removed.
Okay.
And I would like to have the minutes for the September 14 regular meeting removed.
Okay. Those have been removed. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We will now vote by roll call to approve the consent agenda.
Ellenberg,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Green,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Michelson,
Aye.
Shaw,
Aye.
Wallen Friedman.
Aye.
The consent agenda is approved. Is there a motion to approve the Panorama education contract?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second. I do not have questions about this. I asked for it to be removed because I'm going to abstain.
Great. Thank you, Lenny. I was actually going to remove it anyway because I had a question about it. So you helped me from a process perspective. I was just wondering, I believe we have Jeff Jorgensen here. I was wondering if you could just about this contract and what you think that it is going to, what, if anything, you think will provide the district from a data collection perspective regarding social and emotional skills.
This is really to help us out with our endeavor under the strategic area strategic area C, which is our area of student wellness and social emotional learning. So this contract with Panorama will help us to get a good baseline from which we can then establish good progress monitoring tools to assist us in identifying students. Overall, their overall functioning in those 5 areas of social emotional functioning, and give teachers a literal dashboard within their classrooms to assist them in making adjustments to the social emotional skills or trainings that they need to perhaps work on a little bit harder within their classroom. It's a classroom level model, but it's also a building level model and also a district level model, so that we will be able to get kind of a running baseline on how our students are doing in each of the SEL competency areas. This is something that we've talked about for a long time within the district, and wanting to be able to get to a better understanding of what our student population looks like in relationship to those social emotional skills. And again, falls hand in hand, both with our strategic plan and with our SEL study that we completed just last year.
Okay, great. I would love to learn more about it at a board meeting maybe when we're talking about district measures. But I'm really excited about this.
Yeah.
So, Okay, we'll now vote by roll call sorry, unless anyone else has any other questions. If not, we'll vote by roll call to approve the Panorama education contract.
Allenberg,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Green,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Michelson,
Aye.
Shaw,
Aye.
and Wallen Friedman.
Abstain.
The Panorama education contract is approved. Do I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from the September 14th regular meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Yeah,
Ellen?
hi. I just noticed earlier today, actually, that I had made a motion on that meeting, and I had walked it in, and it is not showing it all in the minutes. And I know that our policy number 203 states that motions must include the substance of all official actions taken by the board or any regular special meeting. So I'd like to add the substance of that motion into the minutes. It had been emailed to the board, or it had been on the screen during that meeting. I could read those, what was the substance of that now to be added to the minutes, or I would be okay with you taking what had been provided the board at that meeting.
Which item? So the notes themselves say walked in edit failed by majority roll call. Member Jones's suggested edit to policy 601. Member Jones moved and Member Michelson seconded to amend policy 601 with the addition of walked in language. Members Allenberg, Fox, Green, Shaw, and Wallen Friedman voted nay, and members Jones and Michelson voted aye by roll call vote. Motion failed.
Right. That does not include the substance of the motion. The policy says the substance of the motion needs to be included. So it's simple. It's just a simple thing. You all voted on it. I would just be adding the
What
word.
Maybe we could just vote it up.
Policy 203.
Sorry, what were you going to say, Lenny? You're on mute.
I just asked for the policy reference. I was just going to look at 203, that's all.
It's section 8.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
Have we included other motions that have been walked in? I mean, do we include the content in the past? Have we done that? Because all our meetings are videotaped.
Right.
So.
Right.
Well, not all of our meetings are videotaped.
All of our regular board meetings. All of our regular board meetings are.
Yeah.
Right, but we are taking votes. I mean, this is a longer topic, but this meeting was taped. It was a regular meeting, I believe. If it wasn't taped, I don't know.
This meeting was taped. It's a regular meeting.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm just asking, for sake of transparency, that the substance be published, and if not, we would be going against policy.
So I think that this is a broader question about our note taking and what we do for all of our motions. I'm looking through our notes right now, and I don't think we include the text of every single motion that's brought.
Well, I don't know, but all I'm saying is that we're not then for this motion, which I will read so that it's in the minutes, or at least on this recording. The motion said, I move to add to the following wording to policy.
Just wait a second, Ellen. Just wait a second. So your motion actually is to approve, you made a motion to approve the September 14th special meeting notes. So we have a motion on the table to approve.
The motion, the motion is to amend the minutes.
No, the motion was to approve the minutes. You're
motion
saying
is
the
to
minutes should not be approved as listed because they're not specific enough.
Right, I'm asking for a correction to the minutes.
So don't we have to?
So we would have to vote the current minutes down.
Okay. And then I would make a motion. I took it off the consent agenda so that it would be discussed. And so now I guess in order for it to be, for minutes to be amended, then I'm sorry, I'm not a real, I don't know all of Robert's rules. All I'm saying is that I'd like these minutes to reflect.
So we can't have two motions on the table at the same time. So we have to vote on the current motion.
I mean, shouldn't I just decline? Shouldn't I just amend the minutes? Can't I? This motion is to approve the minutes, and I'm just adding to that a friendly amendment that we amend that part of the minutes.
Great. The board can vote on whether to amend the minutes as you've requested. I think someone else already asked the question, which is, it seems like our minutes don't usually detail the substance of the motion.
Well, but that's because the motion wasn't walked in. So if you walk in a motion, then you won't see anything in the minutes about that walked in. I just don't understand why you would want to hide this.
There's nothing to hide. It's a matter of process and protocol.
Well, then I would go with process and policy, which says that the substance of the motion should be in our minutes.
What do you want the minutes to say?
I want it to say what was presented to the board. I can read that to you.
So why don't we vote on the minutes as is? Because I don't think the board actually is interested in what you are trying to add to it. So I think it'll be easier if the board actually votes. And then if the majority of the board, Ellen, wants to add that in, then we can add that in. So the quickest is to have the board actually vote on the minutes as is. So there is a motion on the table to approve the September 14th special meeting minutes. So Sarah, can we please take a roll call vote on approving the September 4th special meeting minutes?
Regular meeting.
Except as the
Regular meeting minutes. I apologize.
Okay. Allenberg.
Aye.
Fox.
Aye.
Green.
Aye.
Jones.
Nay.
Michelson.
Nay.
Shaw.
Aye.
And Wallenfriedman.
Aye.
So the September 14th regular meeting minutes are approved.
So there's no way that that this is going to then be in any of the minutes, and I want to make a note of the fact that this goes against our policy, and I do not understand why this board is wanting to hide this.
Just to clarify, we're not trying to hide anything. We're trying to adhere to protocol and policy. And if you would like to have a longer discussion about how we take meeting minutes and what we put into our meeting minutes, I'm more than happy to engage in that conversation. But to pull one set of meeting notes and want to change how we've taken our meeting minutes, that's what I have a problem with. But I'm more than happy to have a conversation about how this policy is interpreted by board members, and if we're doing it consistently through our meeting minutes, and we can certainly have that conversation.
Sure, let's have that conversation, because I honestly think that motions presented to the board and acted upon the board should be reflected in the minutes.
Lenny, you're off. Was there something you wanted to say?
No, I was actually just going to say that I think we'd have to look at the way the minutes are done for all motions. There's no distinction between motions that are brought in versus other motions. So I think it's just a broader question.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Okay. We're moving on to our discussion items and talk about our learning model framework that we just spoke about in our work session. So we are you going to kick that up, John?
I will kick that off.
And then I think it might be helpful if Randy or you could pull it up on the screen for people to look at.
So just to, we are at a point where we're beginning to look at our learning model during this COVID pandemic. So the state gave school districts the direction to develop a in-person, a hybrid, and a virtual model. So Edina has followed through with that, and we are currently offering a hybrid and a virtual model to our students. And what we're going to present tonight is a plan for gathering data around 4 different strategic goals. One is safety, one is teaching and learning, one is social and emotional support, and the last one is operations and sustainability. This data includes not only information from our own system, which most of it is from our own system, but it's also from our state and regional health partners. And we are also asking our Edina staff, our Edina parents and students. So change in learning model has to weigh with learning. We know that if we bring more kids into the system, we have the chance of increasing the viral transmission. So we have that safety consideration we have to think about. But we also have to think about that we know that when we bring kids into schools, we change their learning environment so they're in front of a teacher. Our teachers are working very well in multiple learning models, creating, they really are, we see the need for more time for planning and preparing. We also understand the stress of managing different cohorts of kids as they come in and out. Our teachers have been great partners and just great professionals in ensuring that our kids are engaged in their in the Edina curriculum. We also have to think about our other staff groups that would be impacted if more students attend in person. Our nurses would have to monitor the health of the school and the classrooms and the kids, custodians and transportation, of course, custodians with the additional cleaning and transportation with additional kids on the. Our parents are struggling to balance work while supporting their students in home learning. And we are also recognize that parents are concerned about their students adapting to new learning models and the effect on their academic progress. And most importantly for our students, we've already begun to bring in students with greater learning needs. We've done that with special ed for more in-person days, especially in our center-based programs. And I know special ed continues to identify bringing students in to ensure those special ed students are receiving the services and the learning they need to excel. As the years progressing, we continue to learn about their learning models through our collaboration with our teachers, with our parents and our students. And we're trying to replicate some of the improvements that we've seen in the system across some of the sites, identifying what is working and what is not working, and then trying to find those creative solutions. So the decision to increase the in-person learning has to balance the goals that I mentioned, as well as the needs of all the district stakeholders, but keeping our decision centered on student learning. So tonight, I'm going to ask Randy to a a model, a framework that shows the data we'll collect. And we're actually surveying right now. So this is being implemented across the system. This model was created with the help of Julie Green, Eric Allenberg, and Ellen Jones, and Randy, me, and others in developing a survey in the leadership. So I'm going to have Randy talk about more specifically what this data framework is. Dr. Smazel.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, Chair Allenberg, Superintendent Schultz, school board members, and community members. We appreciate the time to have this discussion. First of all, I want to recognize that our teachers and our principals are working extremely hard. This is a very, very challenging time in education. And I just want to call it out and say they are amazing people that are trying to do their best by kids. And we've given them a very challenging hand to deal with. But that's why we're looking at this data, and that's why we're having these discussions. As you'll see from this document, there's many data sources that we'll be collecting Hennepin County, from our schools themselves, through surveys or input forms, through assessments, through our student information system, and through walkthroughs that we're doing inside the schools. Of course, what's really important are these 4 key elements, and I'll start with safety. We're looking at the Hennepin County case rates and monitoring those. We were disappointed to see that those were continuing to climb this last week. At now above 21 per 10,000. We'll monitor those every Thursday. And of course, those are really important in the formula about what we do moving forward or what we can do moving forward. We do track internally student and staff infection rates. Some of that data is protected, but what is available is published by the Minnesota Department of Health in terms of what's going on in schools. We also are doing walkthroughs on our protocols and just checking our protocols, whether it be around masking or signage or just knowledge that staff have about what to do if a student has COVID or what to do with various COVID symptoms or masking or hand washing, etc. And then we have building infrastructure where we look at ventilation and cleaning. And one of our goals is definitely to maximize the amount of air exchange that we have on a daily basis, and it's important to just continue to rotate out that air since this is. In terms of teaching and learning, we're trying to identify how students are engaging in and around the 3 different models, both the face-to-face and person time, the hybrid model, and then distance learning, which we're calling EVA, Edina Virtual Academy. We're looking at that through survey work with teachers, with kids, with parents. We're also looking at identifying how we are supporting students who are struggling, whether or not those interventions are working, and are students growing and meeting exceeding progress toward standards. That's another way that we're kind of checking the pacing of the curriculum and how well that pacing is working. We have given a number of academic assessments early this fall around FAST Bridge for reading and for early literacy. Those are ways of us understanding where kids are coming into the school year in terms of some of their challenges or some of their successes. And then this winter, we'll also continue with our normal MAP process, where we look at MAP reading and MAP math as kind of the outside quality control check on our educational system. We also have a number of formative and summative assessments that we use internally to track learning. We use end-of-unit assessments in math at the elementary level, and those are important tools that help us gauge how kids are progressing in the math and focus curriculum as they proceed from unit to unit. In addition to that, we're looking at a couple of factors around social emotional learning. We'll continue to dig deeper on these in the future, but just looking at connectedness and belonging, and do people feel, students specifically, staff specifically, that they are connected and they feel supported, or they have a go-to person to rely upon. These supports and networks are really important as students and staff are navigating, again, this super challenging time. And then in terms of operations and sustainability, we're looking at whether or not staff feel they have sufficient equipment to not only teach the curriculum, but the technology that's used along the way, and then the personal protective equipment that's needed to provide the service for students. We know that staffing is really important because staffing is how we deliver these models. And specifically, if we had an outbreak with our teachers in a particular site, we wouldn't be able to staff the hybrid and we would have to pull back into remote learning. We've seen that happen in a district near us, Orono, the last week or so. So we know that we have to monitor the staffing. We have to monitor the health of our staff because they're essential to whether or not the models can continue as they are. We're also monitoring enrollment. We'll be providing a much more detailed and specific report around enrollment coming up on the October 27th board meeting. We're also managing and monitoring finances. We've received some other revenues outside of the district in these COVID times, but definitely there are also other expenses and sometimes unanticipated expenses, but we're monitoring that closely. And then part of the input forms is to collect information from not only students and not only staff, but also family members around the effectiveness of communication that we're putting out across the district or that exists within a building. And also looking at the perception of our commitment to all learners from an equity standpoint, whether that's felt and viewed in the classroom, whether it's felt and viewed in the buildings, and it's felt and viewed across the district. And these are all really important elements for us to consider as we determine what to do next, what the next step is. And this framework is our way of organizing some of these more important elements as we decide if we're going to maintain what we have or if we're going to shift the model in some way, shape, or form. So a lot of data to come to that discussion.
So with that, I think the board has any questions or comments on the plan. It is our plan to, and I want to let the public know the board had a great discussion right prior to this meeting in their work session. We're working from the base model of our AAPE schedule, Wednesday being virtual, and asking leadership to bring a recommendation that least disruptive to families is consistent within the framework that was just presented, and bringing back students that under the parameters of space, resources, health, and the learning environment. So that would be the plan.
John, could you walk through this timeline that you put together just so
Sure.
the community has a better understanding of the process steps and the timing that we're looking at?
So we sent out the surveys to the families on Friday. We have this meeting input and guidance on the plan for collecting data. We have an incident command team that I meet with. It's teaching and learning, the assistant superintendent, EME president, teachers representative, director of human resources, director of technology, Chair Allenberg sits on that, director of special services, assistant to the superintendent, director of business services. We also have the Bloomington Health Department, the epidemiologist, Nick Kelly. And then the state of Minnesota has given us the partner of a regional health consultant. She works through Metropolitan EXU, providing services to the school district. So she'll be part of a meeting that we're actually having tomorrow to talk more about this, and we'll have the incident command team give input, talking about what's happening with the virus in the community as well as looking at the school system. On Wednesday of next week, the survey closes. On October 19th, we will have data that will be reviewed by district leadership. We will publish that data and to the board on October 20th. Again, the incident command team will review the data, and then we'll discuss any model change moving forward. And then October 20th is the discussion with the school board. So that's the plan that we have in place. We are Working on our Hennepin County numbers, as Randy mentioned, that are increasing. So we're working within that environment of the virus. So we want to respect that number because that means a respect of safety for everybody in our schools, including our kids and our teachers and staff.
Great, thank you. Yeah, Matt?
I guess just because people weren't on the work session, this is one of those situations where we just did about an hour and 45 minutes going through it, but just to also repeat some board discussion, maybe?
Yep.
And anybody let me know if it sounds off. I personally thought of a framing from the discussion as around the first concern being health and general safety, the second one being space, and the third one being about resources and financials. And I think we all kind of got to a comfortable place that we're really looking to get information back on October 22nd from everything that John said. In terms of those considerations, we had always said in the previous work sessions that we're looking at bringing back elementary first, starting with as soon as possible from a health, space, and resource, which means our teachers are safe, our administrators are safe, our parents, everybody's in a good place. But really that was the framework from which a lot of conversation took place. We had conversations also about what numbers are the best ones to look at. Do we need to follow Minnesota Department of Health numbers? That's something I think we'll discuss more on the 22nd additionally, but I think that we continue to look to the experts. And what was the gentleman's name? Nick Kelly? Epidemiologist from Bloomington was on going through those numbers. I think nobody on the board was excited to see the number jump above 20 this past week, which is a clear barometer around when you can more actively feel comfortable bringing back students based on the way that all public schools are addressing it for the most part in the area. So just to kind of recap some of those things, we made sure that we discussed the first grade concern. We still received many emails. We hear you, that is the top priority next. And we're working on all these things within those confines of health and safety, space, and then resources, including financials. And we also asked for the next discussion to understand from the administration what costs and other challenges come with bringing back more students so we can digest that and try to move forward as quickly as possible. I'll pause, but just to try to help people and recap, because I'm sure there's new people on this side as a work session, but we just went through that in more detail. And none of us wanted to have just a quick head nod because of how important this is and how much time we're putting into it. So I'll pause there if that probably captured our thoughts.
Can I just add one thing to that, is that we have said, and John has reiterated, that we do need to hear from teachers about before anything is to go forward, especially when we talk about the first grade. We know parents are really anxious about that. We need to hear from teachers, we need to hear from administration, we need to have all of this information before that's a recommendation that the board is comfortable just making agreement on.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, well, I mean, the board did discuss this quite a bit, and I don't know if they would want to provide the recording of that earlier discussion so we wouldn't have to repeat ourselves on the website. That would be one way of shortening this discussion here a little bit.
Is there a way we could do that?
It depends if we want to have a discussion about recording our work sessions or not.
Well, it's about this specific. In the past we have posted the discussions about our hybrid model, since so many of the community are very interested in that.
Can I jump in with questions?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and I'm not sure who would be able to answer this. I'm not sure who's on the call, but one of the things I forgot to ask when we were talking about ventilation is, does our ventilation measure, I guess the air exchange, but the CO2 numbers, are we getting those numbers?
Specifically carbon dioxide?
Yeah, just because
I'd have to ask Eric.
I would just ask that maybe we look into, that seems to be kind of the latest talk about those numbers being really important and fluctuating. And then there was some small discussion in the work session about this, but I guess I will ask if anybody else is interested in revisiting our communication to schools when COVID cases occur. I know that Nick talked a little bit about that. I would be in favor of us at least revisiting that decision and kind of coming up with a common, consistent message. I'm a believer in more information is better, and that as long as we aren't violating any HIPAA information, not only as a parent do I feel like it make good decisions about my kids, but as a community member, it helps me make decisions, and I would think it might help other community members make decisions about their actions. So I'm not sure if anybody else is on board with that. I just personally would be interested in us revisiting that.
So I think one of the things I'm learning from other superintendents is that when you first start out with this and you have a transmission or a case, your numbers are small, so they become identifiable when they're small. So I think as and Edina's numbers have stayed small, so Edina Public Schools numbers have stayed small. And I think Nick also mentioned that some of the community transmission, we don't have that information, and we don't always get that information.
So maybe we talk to him about seeing, is there a threshold that we put out there?
Right, so the state has anything over 5 cases needs to be reported.
Per district or per school?
Per school.
Per school, okay.
So those are some I guess some rules we could follow, but I think because our numbers are small, we are cautious about not putting them out because they become identifiable. But this Department of Health does require us to send parents and school communities that there was a case that did have contact.
Okay.
And unless it goes, there could be an Edina student that has COVID. If it wasn't within the school system, it would not get reported back to the district.
Okay.
And so I think there's sometimes an impression that I know so-and-so has COVID, they're an Edina school student, why isn't the school telling me about it? But unless we hear back, we can only report
what we know.
The specific cases the Department of Health reports to us.
Okay.
So
that makes sense.
And only those cases.
Okay.
So I think Nick mentioned that too, mentioned that in his presentation too, when he was talking about you have a student who starts to show symptoms, doesn't come in, self-quarantines, tests positive. That is not a number that's recorded. So I think what we have to talk about as a board is setting those expectations, because there are, you hear different things, you hear a rumor, you hear so-and-so has it, you hear it comes up here, and I just want to be clear, and maybe that's part of the communication plan is explaining what we are allowed to report at a time in that, so that we can make sure the public understands what we're privy to. And so it's not a matter of hiding the information or not sharing the information. It's literal access to that information, I think, is part of this discussion too.
Had to be consistent, right?
Yeah, and to be consistent about it, exactly.
And so here's what I heard at the earlier meeting, and we could, granted, if we could provide the recording to the rest of the community, you would hear it. The representative from the Department of Public Health said that he did feel that it was possible for our district to allow the information that if there was a positive case at a school, that would be provided to the people in that school community. And I agree, Janie, with what you were saying, that, these are really individual decisions that people are making about their own family's well-being. And I feel that it's up to them to get that type of information and for our district to deliver that in a transparent way, according to the ways that the state has told us that we could. And they have actually even provided the districts on their website a sample letter that would enable us to use the wording that would not give away any privacy. So I do feel that this is an important topic, and you had asked if we could talk about it at some other time, and I would like to talk about that because it impacts the whole district.
Jeannie, I like the idea because the more transparent we are, the more people believe in what we say. And I think transparency in many areas is a very good thing. And the more that we can put the context around it too, that's already been brought up.
Well, I like the 5 case threshold for school. I'll be honest. I'll just put this out there as a parent. I don't kid myself into thinking that there won't be COVID cases at my children's school. I'm really impressed with what our numbers have been in Edina. I just feel like there's that threshold of when I start to change some of my decision making, and maybe others do too. It's, if that information is readily available.
So I think we need to come up with whatever the process is, and it needs to be consistent.
Yep.
And I think we also need to look ahead to whatever process we decide on. Might be really easy to do right now when we have very few COVID cases. If we have more COVID cases and we decide as a district that we're going to send a notification out every single case, as opposed to spread, that it needs a completely different thing from a communications process perspective. So I think we just need to think through.
That's kind of what I was just asking, if we could revisit it and maybe
I think that's a great idea.
With Nick to say, are we only communicating those that are actually a school spread, right? Like, are we, if Joey so-and-so gets COVID on a weekend away, but he didn't expose any students and he never came back to school, like Julie was saying, then that's not part of it. I'm not sure, but I just feel like there could be a better structure around it. It just for parents and families.
Would that be something we can talk about at the next work session?
Okay. Thank you.
All right, great.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, it's going to get trickier and trickier as we head into flu season.
Right.
I agree.
Right. It'll be to just get the clear protocol so everybody feels comfortable and goes back, because everyone's going to keep their own kid home if they have a slight temperature or runny nose as we get into November. And that there's, try to also, this will help with any kind of alarmism or concern about false negatives.
Yep.
Good.
Are there any other comments about the next steps for this model?
Actually, I've got a couple of questions. I didn't get a chance to ask these at the work session. And Randy, I think they'd probably be in your area. I'm looking at page 7 on the blue sheet. And it's column instruments, and then it's the measures for academic progress. And we've got 3 areas. The first is early literacy. I think that's great. I've heard that's a fantastic set of tests for very early learners. My first question is about the FAST CBM. Is that just a fluency test? Or are we also bringing in comprehension on that? Happen to know that, Randy, one way or another?
I might actually defer to Donna or Jody to add any details around the FAST assessment.
The FAST is a fluency measure that we're doing to check for comprehension is when we're doing the being a reader assessments to have students read to the students read to the teachers, so they're hearing them and asking them comprehension questions that are followed up. But the FAST CBM is a fluency.
So when do we bring in comprehension tests?
So that's the in our curriculum, in our Making Meaning curriculum, the students read passages to teachers, and there's comprehension connected to those assessments.
Okay, but the motivation behind this set of questions is because comprehension, just fluency tests can sometimes miss dyslexia. And so comprehension can test if that's done on a standard basis, especially in the early grades, can be a pretty good screening for dyslexia. Mm-hmm. And so I guess I would probably weigh in that if we could throw in as many comprehension tests with the CBM as possible, I would vote for that. So,
Yes.
And can I just interject, just to clarify for anyone listening, these instruments are not the only things that we are testing our students on. So I don't want you to think that comprehension tests, what we were trying to elevate here is what are some things that we could aggregate and bring up to the board level that would be...
So this is high level is what you're saying?
Yes. So and it's harder to aggregate the comprehension data, but I don't want you to think that the teachers are not doing comprehension tests.
Because one of my concerns was that because we're adapting so much and we're doing so much on the fly, that we don't miss some of these critical screening measures.
For sure. No, there's in fact, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jody or Randy, there is a lot of student level testing and measure going on. The struggle that we have as a district is the high level testing and the high stakes testing is gone. And so that's why we're trying to come up with what are those measures that we can try to figure out from a systems perspective. And so
we're trying to surface it here.
Yes.
Some kind of expression.
Yes. And so that's what these four, this was sort of a starting point of getting system level, but not, this is not.
It's not thorough. It's not comprehensive.
It's not comprehensive. It's what we're doing from a student level.
Okay, so then I can drop that line of questioning.
I just wanted you to know.
Okay, excellent. And so then I'll just go to my third observation question is on the NWEA maps. I'm noticing grade 3 and grade 8. Are we still doing 4 through 7? Or are we not doing map tests on those? Just some clarification on that one, Randy.
Yeah, I think we are, we put grade 3 and 8 as just a sample of what to look at for some of these dipstick checks for this particular metric card for the board. But of course, we are still doing MAP in 3 through 8 through the system. But that was just in terms of narrowing down maybe what is reported.
Excellent, perfect. And then just clarification, are we doing MAP just in the winter or are we doing a spring and a fall? I was a little bit unclear about that.
We still have it scheduled as the winter tour.
Okay. At some point, Erica, I might just be interested in visiting our pacing on that, whether we could do 2 a year or we're doing just 1 a year. So, okay, that's.
Yeah, and I would chime in. I think that particularly in this year, testing is, first of all, when I want to say something about testing briefly, but I agree with Owen that I think we should be looking at a fall, spring, particularly this year. And I want to say that for testing, I am not going to be doing this to hold teachers accountable, but to know where our students are, where the learning loss has been for last spring. I think it's really very important for us to get a very good handle on that. And so I think that in terms of just this one MAP score in the middle of the winter may not really help us enough. So
it really depends.
I'm sorry, Owen, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go. So.
Well, that's one of my questions, and Erica's, I just looked at her, and we'll be able to talk about this at another point. But the point is really not to go deep dive right now on this.
Right. I think Randy was going to say something about the struggle with the. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just add that it really is about what the board needs for information and what you want for information as a governing board. I think if you're saying that we want MAP so teachers can know what to teach and what kids haven't learned, we have really good assessments that give teachers that data. The map is more of a general overview of where our population is at, but not to really drill down and say they're missing this specific skill or they don't understand this specific concept. So I think the purpose of those assessments, it's a great conversation. The purpose of the assessments and how they're used in the district is a really important conversation. But if the board is looking for something from a board level or from an accountability level, I'm not sure. That's a different conversation than wanting to be sure our teachers have assessments they can use to diagnose learning. Because that's what we're doing right now with FAST, with some of the other assessments around literacy, some of the assessments around math, is they're diagnosing who is achieving, who's not, and then how do we respond to that in a real-time way.
Thank you, Randy. I'm going to move on unless anyone has any objections to our next.
I actually have a couple comments. Thank you. And I made my comments, most of them during the work session, but so I'll just follow up with a simple comment, which is that I'm hopeful that we as a board can remain open to other approaches besides the AABB if it becomes evident that there may be a better way. And in the document, I have been looking to see, so I agree that this is a great framework. I'm really glad that we're looking at additional improvements to what we're offering and a framework for how we and when we would change. So I'm really happy with that. I also want to comment once again that I really appreciate all the work that the administration is doing and that the teachers are doing and all the rest of the staff. This has to be highlighted because I know that they are working very hard. And this board, everyone on the board has said that many times, but I don't think you can say it enough. And I know I said it at the last meeting, but I do appreciate your work. I don't see on here that we are, that this, I don't know the survey questions you're asking the teachers, but what I'm hearing is that they feel that our stakeholders feel that this is not sustainable, the current hybrid model. And so what I'm wondering about with these surveys is, are we asking those questions? Is this sustainable for you as a family, as a teacher or staff member, and administration fiscally? Is this sustainable? And if not, why not? So those are the concerns that I am hearing, both from a teacher standpoint, and I'm looking at this, and I'm not sure if the first item under social and emotional support is really where, for a teacher survey, if the survey question would get at some of the aspects that they have mentioned that are difficult in terms of time. So that's my question is, I'm hoping that the survey that you're sending out is seeking to understand what are the challenges that the teachers are having, and not just in safety, which is very important, but also in terms of just the workload.
Okay. We're going to move on to our early learning program report. And we have Valerie Burke, the Director of Community Education Services, and Leah Bird, who is the co-coordinator of the Edina Early Learning Center here, to give an overview of district plans for the Edina Early Learning Center. So, hello, Val and Leah.
Hi, everyone. Good evening.
Hello.
I'm stalling because Val is supposed to go first.
Oh, Val, you're on mute.
Val's on mute.
Apologize, I was worried about the camera. Thank you, Leah, for getting this kicked off. Good evening, all. We're delighted to be here to share the Early Learning Center planning. Tonight, Leah Bird, co-coordinator of the Early Learning Center, and I are going to share with you information about the Edina Public Schools and the Edina Learning Center's partnership and shared commitment to building upon a recognized program to serve our families in Edina. I'll begin with where we have been together, and then Leah will share our plans as it relates to the 2020-2025 Edina Public Schools Strategic Plan. The Edina Public Schools has been a full partner with community education from 1985 when we opened our doors to families in the then Edina Family Center. Classroom space on the first floor of the ECC was donated to the Family Center to begin offering our programs. During the next 2 decades, the Edina Family Center grew, thrived, and what was once 1 or 2 classrooms grew into 5 full components of early learning programs: home visiting, early childhood family education, early childhood preschool screening, early childhood special education services, and early childhood preschool and pre-K instruction. Research on the value of high-quality early learning programs exploded during this time period, and the studies have indicated that the years from birth through age 5 are critical for developing the foundations of thinking, behaving, and emotional well-being. The Edina Public Schools continued its strong support and built early learning into its next generation strategic plan by investing in updated early learning spaces as part of the 2015 building referendum. In 2017-18, we opened up the Edina Learning Center as part of that next generation plan, and the ELC was tasked with 4 primary actions to accomplish. Provide a fully integrated program experience for learners of all abilities. That meant knocking down the walls between the early childhood special education and the early learning center preschool programs. We adopted a model of assessment to inform families, staff, and give them a common language of assessment between and amongst our staff and between and amongst our families and our kindergarten teachers. This was the teaching gold strategies. We expanded our early childhood family education classes to hours that could support working families. Saturday and evening classes were offered so we could introduce more families to the joys of parent education. And we also offered an all-day pre-K option for those families who wanted a longer day for their student and offered wraparound services to support working families. I'm proud to say these 4 actions were accomplished, and that brings us to where we are now. And so I'd like to have Leah Bird take it from here to talk to you about the 2020-2025 short and long-term goals.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to share a little bit with you this evening. So want to share that first and foremost in the Early Learning Center, our number 1 goal is that kids love school and that their parents find it a safe place where their kids grow and they can grow as well. But under that caveat, we have lots of short-term goals and long-term goals. So I will start sharing some of those. With regards to our short-term goals, working with our district enrollment office, I'm really happy to share that all of our early learning families will be a part of Infinite Campus, and our families will have a parent portal account, which doesn't seem like a big deal, but it really is quite a big deal. We're going to begin to integrate our ECSE students into our preschool classes this fall. Initially, as COVID hit and when we started planning, we really struggled to figure out how would we do a truly inclusive model that we had been doing. And so made the decision to separate the two to start the year, but are looking forward to bringing our ECSE friends back into our regular classrooms. Continue to focus on curriculum and the pyramid model for social and emotional. And as health and safety permit, we are going to be bringing back our early childhood family education classes, where, as you guys know, parents and families learn together, and children. Our parent education classes, we have one class starting virtual, which is parenting anxieties. Very, very popular. We had a really nice response to families wanting to take that, and that will be offered virtually. And I'm very, very grateful to share that we will be bringing one of our parent educators back to school, and that's pretty exciting. And then the other class that we also had a really robust registration for was our 2-year-old class, our Taste of Preschool, which if you've taken an ECFE class, you know that that's a classroom teacher and a parent educator that work together. And so again, we had a really popular registration for that. So we're able to offer that on Monday and Fridays as well, within the safety boundaries that we worked with our health experts on, and are able to bring back a parent educator to help with those classes. When we think about our long-term goals, so 2020 to 2025, we want to continue to work with our alignment with principals. And I just want to take a minute to acknowledge how gracious and opening Edina Public Schools has been to early childhood. There are many districts that do not have the same luxuries that I am afforded as the coordinator of the program. I am able to attend all principal meetings. My input and value is given when any big decisions are made. I participate in World's Best Workforce. I was at the table when we did strategic planning. And so really, even as we move forward over the next 5 years, really want to keep my seat at that table and continue to advocate for early childhood being a part of the broader Edina Public Schools mission. And so one of the goals that we have is to have our 4-year-old programming be a part of our elementary schools. Not entirely, but parts of it. And so we want to start that initial conversation and planning of what might that look like in the next coming years. Continue to provide financial assistance. Early childhood is quite a detailed braid that we do with regards to offering our kids scholarships so that all kids can have the opportunity for early learning. And so we have a partnership with Edina Give and Go that we've had for 3 years now, which has been incredibly beneficial. And then we also have school readiness aid, Pathway $1 and Pathway $2 through the state of Minnesota. Another goal that we have and are always working on is reviewing our staff hiring practices, making sure that we create a staff that is reflective of our students that come to the Early Learning Center. And I had an opportunity to present with Lisa Hawthorne a year or two ago, and we talked about in the Early Learning Center, we really are one of the most diverse schools in Edina. We've had up to 21 different languages spoken in our school, and that's really important that not just the languages, but all of those cultures are really valued and celebrated, and that kids see evidence of themselves in the staff that work in the Learning Center. Continue to partner with our communications staff more effectively to market the ELC as a gateway for Edina Public Schools. I give tours all the time, and one of the things families sort of perk up is when I talk about our connection to Edina Public Schools. And then, of course, I'm always bothering Mary Whitey to send somebody downstairs to the playground to take a picture of some cuteness. And then lastly, just to continue to build on our partnership with our kindergarten team in the district, just to make sure that we're keeping our communications open and that we're creating the best transition for kids that are entering Edina kindergarten. And that collaboration with the kindergarten teachers is now in its 5th year and has been incredibly beneficial for both sides, the kindergarten teachers and the early childhood teachers. So we look forward to continuing our work in the Early Learning Center and really celebrating all the work we've done around the next gen work and this next strategic plan, and just continuing to be a partner with the district. Thank you.
Is that the end?
No, yes. That's
Oh, I was like, I didn't know if you were tag teaming or. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll just open up. I think. Oh, you got some questions?
Yes. Val and Leah, thank you very much for coming and giving us a presentation. I think you both know that I'm a huge fan of what you do, that my family was very involved in ECFE. I was in the dance class for 6 years, and I thought it was instrumental in my wife and me being good parents. Saw that, and it just created a network of relationships that we built on. And then besides just my profoundly personal experience with it, it's very good for closing the achievement gap, for getting kids ready for school, which is one of our big goals. So and so that leads me to my first comment. I'm thrilled that you're actually taking registrations now. And did I hear that's going to be, are these classes actually in session right now, or are they going to be in session November 1? You may have said that, but I may have missed it.
So, nope, I'm sorry, I didn't say it. Our Tender Tots, Toddlin' Tykes, Busy Babies, those are all in session. And next Monday is when our next round opens as well, which is our Taste of Two's preschool and then our virtual parent ed. And we will just continue as the year goes on to continue to pull our families, find out what they're interested in, and then do the process of getting them open for registration, staffing them, and offering them to our families.
Owen, I just want to mention that we were able to do that early, really due to the creativity of one of our parent educator early learning center teachers. Hats off to Brenda Leipert, who opened up an outdoor classroom. And then working with Mary Hyman, we were able to bring families, parents, and children in together to that outdoor classroom. And then continuing that work with Mary Hyman, we're now able to transition them into the building. So it's really been a strong partnership, and really the outdoor classroom has been a huge hit for families.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for that creativity and flexibility. I'm just thrilled to hear that. The next question observation is, I'm happy to hear that one of the early childhood educators was brought back on. Are there any plans to bring on back some of the other folks that were let go? Where are we at with that?
Well, so just like with all of our programming in early childhood and community education, it's all registration based. And so, the process is that we do the registration, and then based on the amount of people that sign up for a class, that dictates who we can call back to work. And the 5 parent educators that were laid off are phenomenal people and educators, and highly, highly skilled at what they do. So we hope to be able to bring staff back, but as I said, that will be based on registration.
Okay. And my last question is, I've heard some talk about the Early Learning Center sort of integrating into the schools themselves, and you mentioned a partnership with the kindergarten. Could you flesh that out just a little bit more?
Sure. So we have had a collaborative partnership with our district kindergarten teachers since the fall of 2016. And so all of the early childhood teachers that teach 4-year-old programming meet. It's typically every 6 weeks, depending on if we have a snow day around one of those 6-week dates. And we really just have conversations around our practice. What are we doing in early childhood to get kids ready for kindergarten? And what does that mean to a kindergarten teacher for a 4-year-old to be ready to go to kindergarten? And what does it mean for a pre-K, which is our 4-year-old grade teacher, and to get a child ready for kindergarten? And that has been incredibly eye-opening on both sides. Oftentimes in early childhood, we can focus as 4-year-olds are kind of our 12th grade, right? And so we think that from 4 years old down. And so it's really been a push and a goal of mine to have those teachers think about what's next for this child. I'm not getting them ready for June 4th of this year. I'm getting them ready for September 4th of next year, right?
Nice.
And so that conversation has been pivotal. And it's also been really helpful for our kindergarten teachers because, number one, they've generated colleagues within the district that they can call and ask questions if a student comes to kindergarten and they might be struggling or they might not be ready, or they went to the early learning center. Now they have somebody to call and say, tell me what worked. What did you do? Give me some problem solving. And the other piece that's really brought the two groups together is our work with the pyramid model. I know the district kindergarten teachers are quite envious of that work. And so we have really used our learning to help train some of their practices. And so when you think about a long-term goal, we'd really like to open up the conversation of having some of our elementary schools host a class of 4-year-olds, of pre-K students, to really help build that relationship of between the two different groups, and to help the elementary schools. These are our kids coming. How do we make sure that they're ready to be a successful Edina kindergartner? Did I answer that sufficiently?
Yeah, that was excellent, because that actually addresses one of our world's best workforce goals.
Yes.
And you're being very proactive with integrating what you're doing with what the kindergarten teachers are going to be receiving. And there's this cross-pollination going on. So that's very exciting to hear. So yes, thank you for your answer. Very thorough.
Thanks.
I just had a quick comment. I would love to have you guys come back in the spring and speak to us in more detail about how you utilize interventions at the pre-K level, as well as how we can integrate interventions from a pre-K perspective with what we're doing from a K-12 perspective, and talking about some of the literacy work that we're doing, and make it a more seamless, which a segue to what you're already working on, Leah. But I would just like to get a better understanding of pre-K, because I focus so much on K-12, and understand what do we do to look at developmental milestones, and where does our job end and like a pediatrician's begin, and things like that. I'd be really interested in hearing that, and where do we have opportunities to really bolster what we are doing in your area from a district perspective, because we do know obviously those gaps start as young as 1 to 2 years old. So I would love to have you guys come back in the spring and talk through that with us.
I will take you up on that. I'm probably one of the rare people that asks to speak to the school board. I like coming and sharing, and early childhood is really a passion of mine. And, I will volunteer Lisa Hawthorne to sit here with me. We work really collaboratively on interventions in early childhood, and I am really proud of that work. So I would love to come back and share more with you.
Great, thank you. Jane?
Yeah, so definitely very important talking about our 3-year-olds and our pre-K people, but I want to focus a little bit on the part of it. Now you mentioned, Leah, did you say that there is an additional parent educator coming back? Is that what you said? So there'll be 2 on staff?
Yes. Yep. Okay.
And now the ECFE offerings that we have outside of those classes that you mentioned, are we back to doing things like book studies beyond the ECFE classes and those early baby classes? Are we back to a good, robust offering of those things?
So we are back to baby classes, and we do offer a Beyond ECFE virtual class. We don't have any book studies. We did 2 different surveys of our group. One was of our entire school group, and one was of our parents birth to 2, to really ask them, what are you interested in? What are you willing to come and take? And really what we heard is they wanted the Tender Tots, Toddlin' Tykes, Busy Babies, which those are our little ones that have the traditional ECFE. And then we also heard that they were interested in the virtual Beyond ECFE classes, but it really becomes quite a puzzle, which I'm sure many of you are experiencing as well, as when can I take a virtual class? When is my child at school, not at school? How does all that puzzle piece work out? So we offered 6 different offerings to our families. And again, it's all registration based. And so of those offerings, we had 2 that were viable that we could start offering right away. It doesn't mean that we close registration for the ones that we offered. It just means they'll stay open longer and we'll start when the registration allows us to start it. That's really all that means. So we don't ever really cancel registration or close registration at the Early Learning Center. It kind of always stays open. And then as families register, we can tweak dates or teacher work if we need to, so we can fit the need of our families.
Okay, and then I guess maybe Val, this would be a little bit more towards you, but have we looked at, I know you said you surveyed some of the Early Learning Center parents, but a lot of that beyond ECFE dips into our elementary families. And I'm wondering, are we reaching out to them as partners in the community to see if there's a need for some beyond ECFE for our elementary parents? I mean, I'm not saying middle school and high school parents don't need it too, but our elementary parents with those youngest learners, have we thought about doing some virtual stuff in the evenings with them or during the days?
Yes, thank you for asking that, Janie. We're sort of in the middle of figuring out, we've done a couple partnerships, one with District Media and Technology to reach our elementary and our middle school parents on how do you support your learner. So we're exploring a little bit about how Community Ed in general and through the Early Learning Center can serve all of our parent groups. We've done some surveying of them. We've had conversations with principals, the elementary specifically, but also with our middle school principals. And that's just kind of shaking out. I mean, as Leah said, we need to figure out how to build those partnerships with registration base in mind. In a perfect world, we'd love to put a parent educator in every elementary. We just sort of have to figure out how do you fund that kind of an offering, and where we do so many fantastic things here at the Edina schools that a couple of the elementaries have jumped on that as well. And so we're trying to kind of figure out how we put our arms around all the options that are available for parents so we can help make sense to them. Sometimes it's hard for parents, and we hear this feedback that they're getting bombarded in a good way in some ways, but lots of different avenues. And so lots of conversations are happening and more to come on that, but absolutely see opportunities to support our elementary families.
Okay, I just lose sight in all the importance that pre-K brings. I don't want us to lose sight of that basic and boiling it down.
Yeah.
That joys and concerns time, right? Especially right now, joys and concerns feels like it's so important to our parents. Yeah. And I don't want us to lose sight of that because it's a big part of our community, and it always has been. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Oh, Ellen?
Yeah. I have a couple questions. First, I want to say I have always thought that the programming and the reports back about our Early Learning Center is excellent. So I want to acknowledge that we have this incredible jewel of a program, and I want to extend this thought though to more kids. And I'm looking at your goals, and I don't see that we are trying to as a goal. I would want to extend our early learning opportunities to more students, particularly those students who are at risk of being behind when they get to kindergarten. And so I'm looking through these goals, and that to me is this piece that I feel very strongly about, that is a role of our district, is to make sure that kids are prepared. Mm-hmm. And that as many kids as possible will be prepared. And I was just wondering if you could speak to that a little bit, as far as what how are you going to do that though in the midst of a pandemic?
Ellen, thanks for the question. And let me apologize right up front if that wasn't clear in our goals, because reaching out and outreach to our at-risk kids is always a number one goal that we have, right? Mm-hmm. And so, as a past kindergarten teacher, I know exactly what we want kids to know and be able to do and how we define them as ready for school. And we really spend a lot of time in the ELC talking about who are the families that we're not meeting? Who are the ones we're not getting? I'm really grateful to share with you that I have an amazing outreach person, Tabitha Dennison, who is a gift to Edina Public Schools in the way that she thinks outside of the box of how we connect with our families, the ones that don't come through our doors, that might not even know that we're here. And how do we offer them all kinds of programs, preschool, ECFE, parent education only. So we do a lot of outreach with her, with reaching out to our communities. She has a partnership at the library. She has a partnership at the hospital. She works with HUG, which is a metro-wide outreach group that we have that gives us our birth data. And then Tabitha has actually taken it amongst herself to collaborate with all of the sort of like districts on how are they doing outreach? How are they targeting their at-risk kids? And then also one of the biggest questions we ask is our kindergarten teachers, really. Mm-hmm. What are kids coming to kindergarten not being able to do? And how do we do that in the Early Learning Center? And how do we share that knowledge with our other preschools in the community so that we're all targeting or all providing outreach for our incoming kindergarten kids? You're muted, my friend.
Yeah, thank you. And then on a completely different topic, I'm looking at the history of ECFE and the Early Learning Center. And I was wondering if you could speak to, because the board has just been hearing about us needing to let teachers go. And I'm just wondering if you could give me some background on what is the fluctuation of the number of staff? I mean, I think our numbers have remained relatively the same over the last 10 years. I'm just wondering how the numbers on staff have fluctuated.
Sorry, Leah, go ahead.
Well, I will share that in early learning, and not just here in Edina, but statewide, staffing always fluctuates because we're registration based. And so there will be some years where you will be able to have a lot of staff, and other years where you're not able to have a lot of staff because it's all based on registration. The blessing of the Early Learning Center, and Janie spoke to it, is that this is a gem in our community. And we have been so lucky to essentially have a full school, right? But as we came into the pandemic and started thinking about how are we going to safely be able to offer school? How are we going to be able to do that and abide by all the guidelines? We knew that some of the things that we would have to do would be lower our class sizes, lower the offerings. We don't have classes in the afternoon, and that is purposeful to allow for deep cleaning. If you've spent any time around a child 0 to 5, you know how many germs can be on their little hands and fingers. And so this has been a tough year with regards to staffing, because just like all of community ed and really my counterparts in other parts of the metro have really had to have some creative staffing practices and some difficult staffing decisions, not wanting this to be our permanent reality, but also knowing that we need to be a responsible member of the district. And I'm not sure if Val wants to say more.
No, we have talked about this a little bit. It is typically pre-COVID, the fluctuations in the amount of hours we could give staff was sort of in a norm. You definitely had years where certain things were more popular than others, but we have been really fortunate with a very engaged community and a community that wanted to come here. We also are in a situation where we've had a lot of construction in and around our building area that we do hear from families. It's all going to be good on the other side, but it does create at times barriers that we continue to problem solve around, et cetera, because it's sort of like a no pain, no gain. But so over the last couple years, we've noticed, some fluctuations, but typically COVID's the thing that's really taken us, and like, as Leah said, our Metro partners, into about 25 to 30% of their typical enrollments. All of us are working together to figure out, because it's not that the learners don't need us. And they need our supports. It's people figuring out and prioritizing, as Leah said, how do they spend their time? What do they engage in? How do they manage their lives in a COVID environment? And as we get smarter and offer more things, it's been a great pleasure to see families respond with the enrollments they have. Thank you for asking that.
Thank you, guys. Anything else?
Yeah, I have one question. This is great to see that we are, I'm speaking specifically to ECFE programming, to see that classes kind of coming alive more, which is great. My question is, when I'm looking at your goals on here and the long-term goals for the Early Learning Center, I want to make sure that we are including ECFE as one of the main tenets of that. And I don't see it listed as one of the long-term goals in here. And I'm sure that as we're looking, because that ECFE is an integrated part of our roots. And part of that is it's our big differentiation point, right, with other preschools and our community. We're the only ones that offer anything like this, right? Yep. And so as we're looking ahead, it's more of a comment than a question. I just want to make sure that ECFE is here as part of the bottom of, as we're looking ahead in terms of programming and planning, instead of being reactive with registrations, but pulling it back into programming. And I don't know, I feel like there's a little bit of a miss in terms of that. And I don't know if I'm just not reading it correctly, but I wanted to point that out because I don't want us looking back. And I know this has been really unusual circumstances with the pandemic and different planning challenges that we've had, a lot of planning challenges. So I don't know if you guys have anything you want to respond to that with. But.
So Julie, thank you so much. And whoever moved to camera, thank you as well. So I thought that was Julie, but not 100% sure. What I should have put in this report to you is when we talk about moving 4-year-olds into our elementary schools, that is an automatic opening of space in the ELC for ECFE. And that really is the intention. ECFE will never go away. It will always be the bedrock of who we are in early childhood. And it really is a program that we want to grow. And so one of the ways that if we think about how are we going to grow that program is just the actual physical space in the building. Most people do not want to bring babies or under 2-year-olds into programming after noon. And so when we move kids into our elementary schools, it automatically allows us to open more ECFE classrooms in the Early Learning Center. So I apologize that I didn't add that language in there for you all, but that really is the goal, is to continue to use our space in the ELC and to maximize it to the best that we can, and to really offer programming that our families want. And ECFE is also another area where we want to do just as much robust outreach with ECFE as we do with our 3, 4, and sometimes 5-year-old preschool.
Great. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks for asking.
Thank you. Thank you, Val and Leah. We appreciate you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you both.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night, you guys.
Thank you. Great. So we're going to move on to the review section, and I'm going to turn it over to Board Member Michelson, who is our policy chair, to walk us through this.
All right. Thank you, Chair Ellenberg. We have. It's focusing on one of our policy committee members. Basically, they want you to talk, Julie, not me. And we have 2 groups here in reports and discussion. The first is for rapid review, and these are policies 418 and 622. We essentially have language changes here to modernize the language, and they are on both accounts fairly trivial. But before I jumped into that, Janie, you did have an email about it, and I want to open that up for you to talk about if you'd like.
Sure. So my email, I had two questions. The first one was about and Nikki and I talked about it. I was concerned with the removal of the without a physician's prescription and the purpose, but she's walked me through that, and I'm okay with that one. The other question had to do with medical cannabis, and my concern BD products are, if I'm not mistaken, I tried to research as much as I could, would be considered cannabis products, and I don't know how we want as a district to address that, or how it is if it needs to be stated that it's a THC product that's prohibited versus other cannabis products. I'm not sure if Nikki wants to chime in on it all, but that was my only question, and I ask it in a making sure that we are making a safe choice for the district and how we word this.
So then the question operates on two levels, one of which is if Nikki can answer it quickly to your satisfaction, then we can move on and take a vote.
Yeah,
otherwise, we'll then bring it back to committee and review it more in depth. Nikki, any thoughts?
Yes. So this is Nicole Tischer. Thank you for the question. Yes. Right now, the policy is written as an exclusionary policy and not a permissive policy. And so my suggestion at this point wouldn't be not to alter the language, in part because then we'd want to add everything else that isn't excluded, if that makes sense. So right now, it's very differential to the Commissioner of Health, and that's where we'd want to look towards for guidance on what is medical cannabis and what is not.
Okay.
So, yeah, just want to follow on. Nikki, it's very helpful. So, medical cannabis or those kinds of products, especially those without THC that are indicated for epilepsy, especially in minors, could be considered a prescribed drug. So what is that process then? Is that one where there would be a clearance from the school nurse or health practitioner, or?
Well, would that be the same as a controlled substance? Because that was my question, was controlled substance.
Yeah, just trying to.
Because there's a lot of, there's things that students can be prescribed. So would that be along the same lines?
The way that it's currently written is that medical cannabis cannot be prescribed for use on the grounds. And so that's the way that the language and the statutes are currently written. The oils are separate. And when you start to get into different types of oils that don't have that medical cannabis component, whether it be lavender oil or whatever oils that you have, you don't want to start listing those because they're not FDA approved. And so there's some conflict between federal and state law also. And so there's that's why I would suggest that we stick with the statutory language, which is the one that is included here, because it is a area that is quickly evolving.
Okay.
Okay, that's helpful. And then if there's an exclusion needed or something, okay.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you.
So this satisfies?
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, the on-district property part prescribed, this works. Thank you.
So that we will then move this on for action at our next month's meeting. All right. Then we move on to our policies for 11, 12, 19, 21, and 808. And for the community's background, we are on a policy committee tasked with reviewing the 400 series of policies which pertain to personnel. Every year we have a set of policies that we just do a standard 3-year review, and we are going through the 400 series. We're taking in some other policies as well. And Nikki Tischer, who has already spoken, is doing yeoman's work for us in the background. She reviews the policies to see whether there is statutory change that has an effect on the policies. And if the policies are out of alignment with sort of our plumb line, Minnesota Association of School Boards, if their language is different from what we have in our policies. So with that as a preamble, I can dive in on policies 411 and 412. We're recommending that we rescind these, in essence, both because they're covered in statutory language and statutes, and 412 also has some confusing language in it. So what I'll do here is just pause and see if there's a discussion about these two policies. We can take them in turn.
So you said 412 is statutory, that there's statute.
Yes.
It's not just.
Mm-hmm. And so we'd still be under the obligations of the language as specified here.
Okay.
Did we skip the copyright policy?
But
622.
Yeah.
Yeah, we only talked about 42.
Yeah.
You're right.
We're going to do that. We're going to talk. Nikki's coming back with more information.
I'm sorry. Okay.
That's why it's not on the agenda here tonight.
Okay, can I just ask, many of our policies are statutory, they're nearly the whole policy is. So I'm just wondering why we would be taking these out.
I have an answer. Nikki, I'll turn it over to you first, though.
Perfect. So looking at 411, this is hiring procedures. And these hiring procedures go into a lot of, if you look at the bottom of the policy, you'll note that it was actually adopted in 2008. And most of this is components of things that are, as Board Member Michelson mentioned, either statutory in nature or really go down to the processes of the Human Resources Department. It looks like at one time, the Human Resources Department may not have been receiving the information it needed from the buildings, and so there were some elements of confusion. But as we evolve our policies and practice, some of this language becomes outdated. And so the components that aren't statutory, it would be one of those things where we would be constantly coming back to the board to really talk about procedures that are endemic in hiring. And so that was part of this too. So if you look at, for example, the building administrators or department supervisors will be responsible for checking candidates' references. Well, that is something that is already in our policies and practices. And although that isn't something that would change, those are things that are already part of practices and anything, anytime that we would make any small revisions to things like this, if we wanted to ease some of the burdens and actually do the reference checks in the Human Resources Department, that would have to come back to this board. And so it just goes really quite deep and unnecessarily deep in my opinion. Just like the job posting and requirements, employee inquiries will be handled by the Human Resources Department. Some of our best recruitment tools are actually our building administrators. And so when there are questions about individual components of a job, we'll often relay those to the building administrators, not just for answers to those questions, but also to help us recruit the best candidates for our students. And so there's just things in this policy that either are archaic or statutory, and it's not a necessary policy. And so instead of continually bringing it back for revise or being out of compliance with the policy, I would just suggest that it would be rescinded at this point. And so that's the conversation we had. Board Member Michelson, did I miss anything on 411 that you'd like to add?
No, you hit all the hot topics. I think also to add to your question or to answer you, Ellen, is we did talk about that, and that raises a philosophical question that for me, I'm a policy minimalist, and if we can reduce how many policies we have, I think we can govern the district more simply and a little bit more transparently and more easily. And if it's redundant, then if it's already covered by statute, then I would vote in favor of generally erring on the side of removing the policy. We did talk, though, that policies do serve a purpose in terms of communication to the district. We have on the website for listing our policies, and the community members can very easily go and reference that, and it's a pretty quick means of identifying how we're governing the district. Whereas the statutes may not be quite as transparent to the users. And so that's an argument against rescinding policies that may have overlap or be completely covered by statute. So, but as I mentioned earlier, I weigh in on keeping our policies to a minimum, and if it's redundant, then I would be happy. I would like to purge policies.
Yeah, I agree. This policy and the next one to me skirted the line between policy and procedure, and this seemed like an HR procedure / process that belonged in, which we talked about with like the board norms, like belonged in like a HR policy manual or HR manual to explain this is how it works in HR, but did not elevate itself to a level document that we need to man or understand from a board level. So I was fine with removing it from a policy perspective.
Okay. So, and can I ask, I'm hearing the word redundant a couple times. Is it redundant to Edina Public Schools policy?
Redundant to state statutes.
Okay, so you're saying that because it's in state statute, we don't need to reference it even. And like I said, I think that that's just a departure from what we've done in the past. I can understand that when it becomes procedure, if it's a procedural issue, then that's normally appended to a policy. Or we've really minimized the wording and not even appended it to the policy. But I'm just wondering if we are going to be missing something if we don't have this in our policy as we have all the other state regulations that we have included in our policy.
Ellen, I think that's a great question and something that we ought to consider. Nikki, you're going to say something.
Board Member Jones, many school districts don't have these types of policies. There's another component, and so that's part of the things that we bring back to policy committee. Is I bring them. I have 6 different school districts I check with, and we talk about whether they have the policy or why they may not have the policy. And this is really an Edina type policy. Another component of the policy that is now inaccurate is the component about substitutes. We even though we have premier subs this year because of the pandemic, it talks about us maintaining a sub pool. Well, we actually have contracted that out. So there's just different things that are more procedurally related that become challenging to ensure that we keep up with. And so that's another component of why I'd recommend removing this policy.
Okay. It's the first time. Thank you for saying that. I also don't like redundant policies, but I see this inconsistency that we have. If we're stating it so that it's easily accessed, so that we know what the state law is, and when the law changes, then then there is a process that's flagged, because the Minnesota School Board Association will normally tell us these are the law, these impact your district in these ways, and you need to change these policies. But I just looked up and I didn't see this policy on the Minnesota School Board Association list of policies. So I don't know if it's embedded in our other policies or not. I just haven't looked into it.
Board Member Jones, it is not. And that's one of the other components we look at is MSBA policy. So not only the 5 or 6 school districts that I mentioned, but we do go to MSBA policy. And this is one of the standalone policies that we have as a school district. 412 is similar too. And there's just some language, as I did my first read through it, if you look at 412 3B, that's actually counter to both contract and statute. And so there's just things that it's hard to correlate all of these different components together. It's better to look at the master agreement that guides the employment relationship, if that exists, or the guidebook, but to put together policy, statute, and and the master agreement, sometimes you lose one and one contradicts the other. And so things like, that like I mentioned, that 3B in policy 412, there's actually teacher or a licensed employee needs to stay with us until their replacement has been made. But under this language, it looks a little bit different, and that contradicts statute. And so things like that is just hard to keep up on. And once again, 412 is one of those policies that is unique to our district too, and was adopted right around that same time. And the funny part is that was my first experience with the district was right around that, was at 2008 time period, but I can't recall what the derivation of these policies were. And so I was trying to remember, why did we create these policies? But I for the life of me, cannot remember.
Okay, thank you very much. That makes sense to me.
That is one of the most thoughtful and detailed answers I've ever heard to a policy question. That was really impressive, Nikki.
But by the way, for whatever it's worth, neither of these policies actually cite to a statute. So normally when we have a policy that's statutorily based, at the bottom, it cites to all the statutes. These don't. And so they may conflict with statutes. They're not required by statute. Otherwise, I think we would have a reference at the bottom. So that's sort of the further support, Nikki, for eliminating them.
You are correct, Lenny. They are not, neither of them are statutorily required.
I think we're...
Both lawyers have covered it now.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so we'll move on. Excellent discussion, team. Okay, so now we're looking at 419, and we're tightening up the language, and we're making the language a little closer to conformity with state statute. So, for instance, we're eliminating a redundancy on the back page, 207 Minnesota laws, Chapter 82, Freedom to Breathe Act. That's redundant. So that's what's behind this policy.
Great.
Any questions? Okay. Then we'll look at 421, and in essence, we're expanding the definition on this policy in Section 3B, financial interest, meaning ownership and control. We're just elaborating a little bit on our definitions. That's what's going on there.
Any other note is it includes school board members now?
Yes. So, yes, thank you. I had that mark, forgot to mention it. And then policy 808, this is coming up because of things going on right now in the district. There's going to be coming before us on the board here, I believe, Erica.
There's interest in naming certain things after certain people. So this came up to clarify what the process is.
Yes.
We've entertained those discussions for years now on the finance committee.
And every time we see, we're like, this policy needs to be rewritten, and finally
That's good.
we need to do it. So that's why this came up. Out of sequence.
So any comments or discussions, team?
I have one. It's minor, but it's for some reason it keeps standing out to me. So in section 6, what would that be? That's F. 6F, yep. So the district will not name a facility, space, or educational program without the informed consent of the named party. I didn't know if we needed to put informed consent of the named party or their
family,
I can't think of the word.
Their state.
Their state, or whatever, their representative.
Their dedicated
In case we
representatives.
end up, if it ever comes up that it's an in memoriam, that we would put something in there, the named party or their.
Good catch.
That's a great catch.
I know it stuck out to me and I couldn't let it go.
Perfect time to say it. Yep.
Are there any changes to this?
Yes. Nikki, do you want to walk through the changes?
I will. So normally you are correct. You get this beautiful red line, but there was enough significant changes on this where you'll see two different components. And so the first one is with all changes accepted, because you get a real read of the flow, because otherwise on the second, so you have two policies here. One is the red line version, and that's the second one in there. And the first one is the all changes accepted. If you would have just read the red lined version, it wasn't it doesn't flow well because of all the movement of things in different places. And so that's why you received both policies, is one with the all accepted changes. And so really the charge that was provided to the policy committee was to make it flow better. And that's why you'll see a lot of things were moved around, and also look at other districts and their practices and what they have in their policies. And so you'll see some other things that weren't necessarily in there before. And of course, those are the ones that are underlined as exceptions. So I'm happy to walk through either the redlined version or the full version. What is your preference?
No, the one thing I wasn't sure what was going on between the first and the second. And so thank you for explaining that to me. And I'm just wondering if there are terms on naming a facility, and I don't see the and I'm talking about years, so that it would expire after 30 years or after 50 years. But I know that districts can get into trouble even 50 years out if they want to change a building that was, partially donated by a family. And I'm just wondering if that type of clause is in here, or it could be added.
It's in there.
It is in there? Oh.
Yeah, it is. It's in section 5.5b. 5b. It's in section 5b. Because 5a and 5b, really 5a, because we discussed this in finance facilities twice last year, was the idea that we thought the district should always retain the right to change their decision at any time. So that was a decision that finance and facilities weighed in on with outside expertise. So I saw this, but I think 5A addresses that.
Where does it address that?
District reserves the right at its sole discretion to terminate the naming rights without refund or consideration prior to the scheduled termination date, should it feel it necessary to do so to avoid the district prior to dispute as returned by the district, or termination by the named party. So either one can I think it gives enough allowance, but
It's section 6.
Okay, so you don't think that we need to be very clear and always set a date?
I don't think we put term limits on
Section 6 limit B.
facilities.
You have to.
Yeah.
I wouldn't change it in a year.
Yeah, I think an artificial termination date would maybe truncate things that we've put forth as a district in memoriam, and it will always be that name, whether it be Countryside Elementary or the Dragseth Wing. I think we have the ability to terminate when we want, but to check in on something on some type of a date may artificially truncate that naming.
Yeah, and that's not what I wasn't saying that you would be looking at the renewal date and discussing it, but after that date, then it would be really clear that after that date, or even if we decided to before that date. But I'm okay. I'm starting to remember that there are multiple opinions on this, and I kind of like to state those types of things out front with the flexibility of saying, after 30 years, then definitely we can change, but we could change it beforehand if we wanted to as well, without rediscussing it. But that's okay if no one else feels that might be an issue in the future. I'm okay with that.
Lenny?
So yeah, I got a couple of questions. One, thank you for redoing this. It is actually a lot clearer than the prior policy. But a couple of questions. One, in the general statement of policy and in the definitions, it talks about entering into a contract to generate revenue. And that seems to be as if we're saying, hey, we're selling naming rights. And I don't think that that's the intent. So someone, for example, might come and say they want to donate $500,000 we're not trying to generate the revenue, but we're not going to turn it down. So I would prefer that those have a little bit broader, that just saying enter into contracts to lease naming rights. Just sort of, we can either name after somebody for their contributions, non-economic, or name it after them for their economic. But it just strikes me as wrong to say that we're trying to generate money doing this. So that's comment one.
Can I just ask you, Lenny, with that, do we have similar policies on sponsorships? Because that would be advertising or sponsorship. I'm just wondering.
So I think that we do have some language in relation to advertising and when we allow it.
Because I think that these are really closely connected. That's all. When you're talking about that, I agree with your point there. But yeah.
So I just want it like a little bit broader so that it's not only when we're trying to generate revenue, because that sounds. The other was.
I disagree, but I don't want it to preclude us from that ability if we find ourselves in a place that we.
Right, but you can just write it broad enough so that it covers that plus something else, as opposed to this limits it to generating revenue.
So you're basically saying just put the language in recognition of or for financial gains, right?
So Lenny, are you proposing a friendly amendment to this?
Well, first of all, this is discussion, so.
We're not voting.
I'm speaking of, I know. You use that term, so I thought I'd use it.
So as opposed to number 2, I understand what you want.
You could put a period after sponsoring agent.
Yeah.
We've now said that it's only unusual circumstances where name it after somebody who's alive. And former Superintendent Dragseth might sort of wonder about that particular provision, because I think he is still alive. Why did we all of a sudden add that language? I don't think it's in the prior policy. And this is, see if I can find it. It is Roman numeral 6A, and it says, except in unusual circumstances or for compelling reasons, individual names to be considered should be individuals who are deceased. And that's not our practice. The tennis courts, again, I believe that he's still alive.
So I'd love to answer that question, and it's a great question, and it really goes to the fundamental discussion of the board. Really, just you can't predict people who are still alive, and so the legal best practice is to only name after people who are deceased. So if you look at Hopkins and Minneapolis, both of them have this language. And when I was advising in private practice, that was the advice we gave, just because there's an unpredictability in people who are alive. And and you still have some wiggle room, definitely, to name after people who are still alive. But that was the thought, and that was the reason why. Whether the board wants that provision in this policy, it's up to your discretion.
So when you say unpredictability, do you mean in behavior?
In behavior, and then there's an element that is not controlled.
Because the policy also specifically says that if the name of the building causes any impairs the reputation of the district, we can pull the name off. So we already had. It's just sort of odd because we've never had that restriction, and again, the last 2 major namings were for people who were not deceased. So I kind of wonder about that.
I think it prevents us from having to go through the process of, I think removing the name from a building that would be a big deal. And then what is that threshold? Well, what if someone gets in a car accident?
What if it's O.J. Simpson? He wasn't found guilty.
Well, that's so I do think it's a best practice, because it also gives us the ability to be like, you know what, we don't want to do it. It doesn't hold us that we have to do that.
Yeah, I think it speaks to the pause that this is a big deal that we're naming a building, and I think that's how I read it. We were in policy committee talking about it. That's how I read it. Like, it's a compelling reason means it's a big deal to have something named after you, and we gotta pause. So it's just not anybody. That's how I read it.
And I also think it speaks to the longevity that should be considered when naming buildings, as opposed to like, someone's been really popular the last 2 years. And I personally like it, but I'm not, will stake my life on that phrase.
I will note that being deceased has not protected various places from changing names based upon finding about it.
I'm well aware of that.
As we've known, learned.
I won't live or die on that particular one. It just strikes me odd, given that I think 2 or 3 months ago we did something the exact opposite of that. So, all right.
He's lobbying for the Wall and Friedman building.
Yeah. Well, in the library.
Yeah.
I haven't heard it. Fox Field, that's good.
All right. That's it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, so we'll move this for action. So good. I think we can wrap this up and we'll move these to action for the next month's meeting. And with that, I turn the meeting back over to Chairman Allenberg.
Great, thank you. Thank you, everyone. We're going to move on to our action items, and we have Director of Business Services, John Tope, here for our first item, which is ratifying general obligation alternative facility refunding bonds.
And we also have Jody Zespa from
Oh, I'm
Ayers.
sorry.
So,
Welcome.
Hi, Jody.
I apologize. Hello.
Good evening.
Do I have a motion to approve ratifying alternative facility refunding bonds?
Second.
Okay. I will turn it over to you, Mr. Tope, and you, Ms. Zespa.
Good evening, Chair Allenberg, Superintendent Schultz, members of the board. Good late evening, I should add. So the window for refinancing our 2013 all facilities bonds was opening based on the call date. So in August, the board passed the motion, a parameters resolution, making sure that there was at least 3% saving, and authorizing Ehlers and Associates, our financial advisor, to conduct the sale. They conducted the sale on October 7th, and Jody Zesba from Ehlers and Associates will go over the results here shortly. Just wanted to make sure that the public also knows that our AAA bond rating was reaffirmed per the call with Moody's. So important to note that. And we did receive a good number of proposals. I think it was 6, Jody.
Correct.
So good response back and a good result. So I'll turn it over to Jody to go over the sale day results.
Thanks, John. So yes, we were thrilled with the results. We were estimating savings of about $600,000 at the time that we put together the pre-sale estimates for your August meeting, and we ended up saving about $750,000. That is a direct savings to your taxpayers. You're not able to keep it and use it for other areas of your budget, but I'm sure they'll happily accept that. And I'll just highlight a few of the other items related to the results. So as John mentioned, your AAA rating did get affirmed. There's only 2 other districts in the state of Minnesota with that rating. That's the highest rating that you can get from Moody's. And John and John both participated in a call with Moody's and did an excellent job representing your district. And that was very helpful to the process, of course, because they provided them with all of the information that they needed as they move forward with their committee process and ultimately affirming that rating. You did receive 6 bids. The low bidder was Piper Sandler out of Minneapolis. So we'll go through some of the other bidders, but their bid that they provided was a 0.47%. So a very nice low rate and a large premium. And so we'll talk about that in just a minute too. But we had estimated a rate of 0.75%, thinking that was so nice and low, and we got well under that. And that is the reason that you ended up with savings at about $750,000 rather than $600,000. And the parameter that you established at 3% present value savings, your actual results were at 6.54%. And because you had that parameter in place, you had authorized individuals to move ahead and accept that proposal on your behalf. So Matt Fox, your treasurer, and John both accepted that. And so the resolution that you have before you tonight will ratify that award. So the bid tab is included with the information that you received. And again, you can see Piper Sandler was the lowest. You got bids from throughout the country. So Huntington Securities out of Chicago, Illinois, BNY Mellon Capital Management out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Hilltop Securities out of their Dallas office, Raymond James out of St. Petersburg, Florida, and then Baird out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And the high rate was from Baird, and that was a 0.59%. So still, the high bid was lower than what we were expecting back in August. The sources and uses schedule and the other financial schedules are the same schedules that we provided you with for your pre-sale report. They're just updated now with the results of the sale. When we put together the authorizing resolution for your August meeting, we assume no premium bid because we're never guaranteed that that's the case. Most of our bids right now have been with pretty significant premiums, but we're never sure of that. And so the estimate at the $10,575,000 that you authorized was assuming no premium bid. We did estimate about $1 million of premium in our pre-sale estimates, and so that's why that dollar amount was at about $9,575,000 when we issued your preliminary official statement, and ultimately received a premium of almost $1.5 million. And that cash can be used then to buy down the amount of debt then that's outstanding on the new bond issue. So that's what we did, and that's why the dollar amount now is just almost $9.1 million that you're issuing. So the coupon rates that you had on your existing issue were 2 to 2.5% with an average of about 2.4. And as I mentioned, the true interest cost rate now is a 0.47%. And so then you can see the savings on page 5 of our report at about $750,000. We were expecting about $120,000 per year starting with this next year and going through taxes payable in 25, and now we'll be closer to about $150,000 in each of those years. And then you did have a press release issued by Moody's, and so you can see the information that they included in there. They mentioned your large and growing tax base, very strong resident income levels, stable enrollment, moderate debt and pension leverage, and then they say the cash and fund balance levels are fine. So they're not as impressed with those, I guess, but they've mentioned that in some of their previous reports too, as they compare to other AAA rated school districts in the nation. And then there is a detailed credit opinion that is also included with your report. And I would mention there, they talk about the exceptional credit quality of the school district. Again, some of the other factors that they mentioned in the press release are included in there. And then just a number of other detailed credit strengths, credit challenges, some of the different types of items that we spoke about during the call with them. And ultimately, they provide a scorecard at the end of their report, which you can take a look at some of the different factors that they're using to come up with their rating. So that is what we have. We're very happy with the results. We certainly appreciate the opportunity to be of service to you again and have some savings for your taxpayers. And I will be happy to respond to any questions that you might have.
Just one other comment, Chair Allenberg, is Jody mentioned that these will refund about $150,000 per year for the 2022 through 2026 maturities. So we will realize instant savings in the form of a levy reduction, as I mentioned before to the board when we passed the preliminary levy for December certification. That reduction now with the increased savings will bring our levy increase down to about 2.76% that we'll be certifying in December.
Great, thank you. Fabulous work.
Yeah, thank you. So two things, both kind of congratulatory comments. I was going to make them during the leadership update portion, but Jody, you and your team have been great to work with. So, I mean, we communicated back and forth seamlessly on a Wednesday, which really helps us get more bids at a lower demand price. So it went really smoothly. Thank you guys. And then John and Ron, the whole team in the finance department, there's been a lot of moving parts, especially Margot and transitioning to John Tope. And bringing in the whole electronic system, and it's been so seamless, the amount of management that's gone on with a relatively small team. So I've just been consistently impressed. The AAA bond rating is exceptional, especially given all the different issues around enrollment that all public schools are seeing, and our goal to continue to maintain a strong bond rating obviously is priority. But thank you all for the work. This is the best outcome we could have had. So thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
John,
I would suggest we approve this.
John and Jody, is there specific language they need, the board needs to make in relation to approval of this? Sometimes you have those.
So it's really the bold. So in your packets on page, it says 24 or 45 on what I'm looking at within the report itself.
Page 900.
Page 24?
Correct, of 45. There's that resolution language that's kind of in capital letters at the top is generally what needs to be read prior to the vote.
It starts with resolution relating to?
Correct.
Okay.
So it just, I think it's resolution relating to $9,085,000 of general obligation alternative facilities refunding bonds, Series 2028, ratifying the award of sale, prescribing the form and details, and providing for the payment thereof. Be it resolved by the school board of the Independent School District number 273, Minnesota, as follows. And then, so that would be what needs to be read for this. And I just read it.
Do I need to read that as the roll call vote?
To the extent you need a motion to that effect, I'm
sorry, you rescind your motion?
No.
Bring that motion.
Well, we already have a motion on the ratify the general obligation alternative facility refunding bonds.
And so I would request to amend that motion to include the language that is in bold that Jody just said we should include.
Page 196.
Got it. Okay, so the motion has been amended to include that language. So we will now vote by roll call to approve the resolution relating to the $9,085,000 general obligation alternative facilities refunding bonds, Series 2020A, ratifying the award of sale, prescribing the form and details, and providing for the payment thereof. Be it resolved by the school board of Independent School District 273, Edina, Minnesota, as follows.
Okay, Allenberg,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Green,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Michelson,
Aye.
Shaw,
Aye.
Friedman,
Aye.
Ratifying the general obligation alternative facility refunding bonds is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Great work, guys.
Can we do this?
Yes.
Great job, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve policies 407 and 408?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Great. Owen?
These policies we went through last month, and they pertain to the employee's right to know with regard to exposure to hazardous substances, and that's 407, and 408 is litigation involving the subpoena of the school district employee.
Any questions, comments? Ready to vote?
Ready.
We'll now vote by roll call to approve policies 407 and 408.
Allenberg,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Green,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Michelson,
Aye.
Shaw,
Aye.
Friedman,
Aye.
Policies 407 and 408 are approved. And that wraps up our action items, which brings us to our leadership and committee updates. Does anyone have any leadership or committee updates?
We covered them.
Okay.
Finance, great stuff, finance team.
Lenny?
So I will preface this by saying I'm reluctant to bring this up, but nevertheless, there was a discussion earlier tonight about the September 14th minutes and the question about whether the walked-in motion should be part of the minutes. I did go back and look in board book, and the walked-in motion is part of our record. It's all in print. Same as we do with any of our other motions. So just want to make that note.
I'm sorry, it's not, where could people find it?
You go to the meeting, click on the meeting agenda, and it's there. It comes
But
right
it's
up.
it's not in the minutes.
It is in the record of our meeting. So the materials that for the meeting, it is all listed there.
But it's not in our minutes.
The same way our minutes don't say that we're approving a contract that has a 3% raise. It says we approve a contract. It has the same general level of specificity. And for people who want to look at the specific of a particular motion, they can go to the materials that are posted and they'll see the walked-in motion also. I'm just saying it's the same level of specificity that we normally use.
Thanks for checking that, Lenny.
Okay, I'm going to move us on. Does anyone have any leadership? I have one that I wanted to bring up at the work session, but John and I have been working on planning our upcoming work sessions, given what we approved as the board goals and the superintendent goals. And we've targeted a February work session to either bring in or talk to / about other districts that have had success from an achievement gap perspective. And I just wanted to suggest that we have the teaching and learning committee look into who we would consider peer districts, and then what would we recommend looking at from a metric perspective, because I think that's going to take a little bit of work to actually decide what are life districts, and then where do we have success, and what do we want to ask to plan that work session. So I just wanted to see if the rest of the board thought that was a good plan to have the teaching and learning committee actually work on that just chunk of what we're going to be working on.
That's what you start, for sure.
So
That's a great idea.
okay. Yep. So Lenny, as chair of teaching and learning, are you okay with that?
Oh, I didn't know he was chair.
So do the administrators within the teaching and learning department have time to all work on that is the question, because it would be them and the committee members.
We can figure that out, Lenny. We got time.
Sure. That sounds great.
Okay, so you're in charge of the February work session.
That's it. And that's February 2023?
Yeah, exactly. So
Erica, before we adjourn, 2 questions. When are we going to cover World's Best Workforce?
that's
It's in the spring.
no.
Usually it's the fall.
It's the fall.
We have there's a statutory requirement that we
Is that our
have a
December
public
meeting?
I think it's December 1.
So it'll be December?
We have it on the calendar, so.
Okay.
I don't know. There is some additional information we'll have to get from the state because we don't have the MCA scores. So I think we're waiting for some direction on what to do with that.
Because we didn't take the test in the spring.
Yeah.
Correct. So
Okay.
December 14th is where we tentatively have it scheduled.
Yeah.
Okay. And the enrollment numbers, are we going to get those?
Enrollment, we have that scheduled for October 27th.
27th, right? Instead of 27th.
Okay, excellent, fantastic, thank you.
Is the 22nd, everyone can make?
Works for me.
February 22nd or October?
October, yeah.
10 days, Thursday next week.
Okay, great. All right.
Is there also one on October 27th?
Yes.
Yes.
22nd and the 27th.
Yep.
So both of them, I'm putting it in now.
Okay. And then everything else, nothing has changed for November, December. So.